Watch this.
And we will have many days ahead where all of us are questioning what happened, wondering why.
Those are questions the victims' families have been asking since yesterday. Two of those families will be asking those questions for a lot longer.
It was silent for a second, and then more shots rang out, followed by breaking glass, what sounded like breaking glass, and footsteps.
Those questions keep coming up for the survivors, too. We speak to a Boise woman who was very close to the tragedy. Meanwhile, it's been a 6-month hiatus, and some lawmakers are heading back to the State House, extending what was already the longest legislative session in Idaho history. They're hoping to address some perceived pandemic problems. It's a refrain we've heard a lot over the last couple of days. This doesn't happen here in Boise, Idaho. In Idaho in general, a gunman opening fire inside of a local mall on a quiet Monday afternoon, killing 2 people, injuring 4 others, including a Boise police officer. Over the last 24 hours, we've seen it all over social media. This doesn't happen here, and it hasn't until it does. According to one USA Today report, before yesterday, there were only 2 states without a single mass shooting incident since 2006, Hawaii and Idaho. But yesterday afternoon, that list shrank to 1. At 1:50 in the afternoon, Boise police say they started to get their first 911 calls, claiming at least 1 person was down at the Boise Towne Square Mall. They say 27-year-old Jacob Berquist started shooting just outside of the Macy's department store. 26-year-old Joe Acker, a security guard, went to confront the shooter and was shot and killed. According to police, the shooter then went inside Macy's, and the shooting continued, shattering the glass of an escalator and hitting another victim, 49-year-old Roberto Padilla, on the 2nd floor. Padilla would die from his injuries. The shooter then ran through the store, continued, firing multiple rounds into the floor, according to police. 2 of those rounds hit a 52-year-old woman and a 23-year-old woman. Officers were on the scene within 3 minutes of those first calls, but for Acker and Padilla, it was too late. Another man was injured in a fall as he tried to get out of the building. Police say the shooter then ran outside, even shooting at a Boise police officer who was in his car. The bullet hit the officer's hat, we're told, and broke the car window. The chase continued behind the Dave & Buster's nearby, where he was met by officers at 1:54, 4 minutes after those first calls came in. There was an exchange of gunfire there between the shooter and at least 1 Boise police officer. That's when a stray bullet hit a 68-year-old woman driving her car on Milwaukee. The shooter, we're told, was injured and was taken into custody before being taken to the hospital. Police tell us today he had multiple firearms and ammunition on him at the time he was arrested, and they found a total of 18 shell casings they recovered inside the mall. The 4 other victims are all expected to survive. This morning, officers executed a search warrant at a mobile home on Fry Street. That was this morning in Boise in relation to this investigation. No word on if they recovered any additional weapons there, but police say they did take some items with them. It was also this morning we learned the shooter died from his injuries. Boise police say there is now a multi-state effort underway to learn more about him. But it seems there was at least some already known about him, according to Chief Lee, who said this about an hour ago.
We had had contact with him in the past. We did not have any reason to arrest him. He was a known subject. He is the subject of other police reports. He was a subject that was known to the mall. He had frequented it before. Mall security had contacted him on past occasions.
Chief Lee categorized the contact as calls of disorderly conduct sorts, trespass calls in nature, and for what he referred to as disruptive behavior, quote unquote. Disruptive enough to raise concern that this where it might be ended up, or maybe there was a threat of some kind made beforehand. Maybe there are other people involved. Chief Lee addressed that as well.
We have heard similar rumors. Part of what we're doing is to capture all of their electronic footprint, social media information, and when I say, let me rephrase that, all of his electronic footprint and his social media. We've issued preservation orders through our colleagues, our federal partners, to ensure that that information remains, that it's intact for us to analyze. We're going through and looking to see whether or not that is fact or rumor at this time.
As of now, though, the rumors of other people involved right now remain that way. Not true, according to Boise's chief of police. The Meridian Police Department has taken over the investigation into the officer-involved shooting aspect of yesterday's events.
Somebody's father or husband or brother, and And the police worked so hard to save him. And
Kathleen Simcoe was one of the dozens of shoppers in the mall and in Macy's yesterday, but one of the few, as you can hear in her voice, one of the few with a firsthand account and upfront view of the tragedy and how it all unfolded just before 2 p.m. yesterday afternoon. Kathleen posted about this experience yesterday on social media and was willing to share her story with our Maggie O'Mara this morning. Kathleen told us yesterday was her day to run errands, with just a couple of days between travel dates. She said she went to Macy's to get bed sheets and was about to head upstairs to get those sheets when she spotted something she thought she would buy for her granddaughter. So instead of heading up the escalator, because the clothes had a security tag attached to it, Kathleen said she went to the checkout counter instead, the one on the lower level, east side, near the entrance to the mall. She was just shopping on a rainy Monday, she says, not something usually worth remembering. But what happened over the next several minutes will stay with Kathleen for the rest of her life.
I was standing in line and heard very clearly, very distinctly, 5 to 6 shots. Immediately I knew they were gunshots. And people started running and panicking. I don't know why. I instinctively started running towards where the shots had come from. And I saw the glimpse of a person running from outside the Macy's. It was a man, a tallish man with a black vest or a jacket on. And then I hid in a rack of dresses. It was silent for a second, and then more shots rang out, followed by breaking glass, what sounded like breaking glass, and footsteps. And my sense was it was a person running. And then it was deafening quiet. There was no sound. I knew there were people hiding close to me, but nobody made a sound. Nobody called on the phone. Nobody felt like they were breathing. I texted my husband back and forth. It seemed like I was there forever, but in looking back at the text, it was probably 8 or 9 minutes. I thought I heard what sounded like a police walkie-talkie, so I left. That was probably stupid, but you do things out of instinct. You don't know why you do them. You can't explain them. And so I left and walked around to the escalator, which is in the center of the Macy's near the jewelry and makeup. And I saw the glass was shattered out of the escalator. I started to run up the escalator and I saw a cell phone and I saw a bag and I saw blood. And I looked in at the top of the stairs. There was a gentleman lying down. The police officers were doing CPR and I thought, maybe I can take over for them while they do something else. The paramedics hadn't gotten there yet. And I got to the top of the stairs and I just froze. I couldn't find my voice to ask. I heard them talking and they said, I don't find an exit wound. He doesn't have a pulse. And I couldn't move. I thought I'm just going to be in the way. So I turned around and walked back down and sat at the bottom of the stairs for a while. And paramedics came and police came and it felt chaotic. And eventually people started coming out of where they had been hiding. And I felt numb. I was comforting other people who were crying because I didn't have any feelings or emotions at that point in time. And eventually we were escorted. We were asked to wait outside. We waited a long time. We were just told to wait. And I felt like I was doing okay until they brought a body out. And I knew that it was the gentleman that I had seen at the top of this escalator and that he died and there was nothing else anybody could do for him. And I felt like he'd been afraid and alone and scared, and I just felt helpless and it felt surreal, and it was the most horrifying thing. And you can't imagine going through it. You never in a million years think it's going to happen to you until it does. And it's so sad. It's just so sad.
As you can imagine, and as you can hear in her voice, Kathleen says she thought about the details of yesterday afternoon all night last night, wrestling with survivor's guilt and second-guessing her decisions. She said she goes from thinking if only she could have gotten to that victim sooner, Mr. Padilla, to help stop the bleeding. Maybe. She goes to second guessing her decision to come out of hiding at all, from wishing she could have helped more to wishing she stayed in that clothes rack so she wouldn't have to see what she saw at the top of that escalator. It's a memory Kathleen says she can't shake. But she does plan on leaning on her friends and on counseling to work her way through it. And there are likely more witnesses out there, of course, victims who will be relying on those same resources as Kathleen, working as a diversion to help them get through it. And lots of support from the community too, as evidenced by the outpouring on social media. We saw lots of thoughts and prayers offered up yesterday and today. Our elected officials calling it a tragedy, senseless violence, and rightfully commending, the responding officers who helped end it and the paramedics who helped the victims. But a couple of comments from our leaders, like by Senator Jim Risch, who said the shooting was an unimaginable tragedy, and Governor Brad Little, who called it unthinkable, unimaginable and unthinkable. Is it? It seems as if we think about it, things like this, on a regular basis. I mean, why else would there be metal detectors at our courthouses? Why else would we put our kids and teachers through lockdown drills? Because we think of these kinds of scenarios often and how they could happen. It was just a matter of when in Idaho. But maybe it's time we start thinking about it differently, about how we could have prevented something like this happening. We're likely to learn a lot more about the shooter over the next several days and weeks. But with the suspect dead, it may be too difficult to discern an actual motive. However, we did learn today he was known to law enforcement before, was even known to mall security. So the question remains, what could have been known and what could have been done to keep the unthinkable from becoming something many won't ever forget? The legislature kind of left on weird terms this spring. The Senate, they called it quits, but the House said they were merely on a break. Well, that break is about over. House members heading back to the State House. But what do they plan on talking about? And will the Senate side follow suit? All right, it's about that time. Grab your phones and let us know what you want to know more about. Text the number on your screen, 208-321-5614. Be sure to include your name and the hashtag #the208. Feel free to send us your questions and, of course, your comments, too. We enjoy hearing what you have to say, good and bad. We may even share a few of them at the end of the show. All 70 members of Idaho's House of Representatives left the State House back in May after the longest legislative session in Idaho history. They did so, though, without formally adjourning, kind of leaving the door open to come back without having to be called back by the governor, which is how they usually do it. So after 6 months away, well, they're going to be back in just a few weeks. Joe Paris spoke with House Speaker Scott Bedke about why lawmakers are coming back and what they are looking to accomplish.
The scoop is that the legislature will come back in, both the House and the Senate, on November 15th. As per the laws or the resolution that we passed back in May. And so we have some unfinished business. We've got to take up the ethics report from the Ethics Committee. And that will be filed with the whole House, and they'll take that up. But I think more importantly, starting at 7:30 that morning, we will seat the Ways and Means Committee, and they will introduce all of the different pieces of legislation that are pending out there. We'll be on the floor of the House by 9, and we'll start the process, regular order.
Is there a scope on what topics legislation can be based on?
Well, this is not a special session, so there are no restrictions. I think that it's our goal to be done in an expeditious way. I mean, we're spending taxpayer dollars every day that we're here. That costs. But I think that for the most part, this is a response to the Biden administration's announcements on, it's the overreach, frankly, that the Biden administration has shown us on mandates, et cetera, and to a person, our caucus is upset about that and wants to be ready for an appropriate response.
In the event that legislation is passed on the House floor, you need your partners in the Senate to tango as well to make it law. I guess, is there a thought of how the Senate could be involved, or is this a situation we hope we don't get into?
Well, the fact that we're in a bicameral system is not lost on the House of Representatives, and so, but having said that, we will do us, and they will do them, and hopefully there'll be consensus on some of the issues that we'll bring forward. But we will bring forward legislation to be prepared against to push back on the federal mandates, and then we'll see how it goes from there. I don't want this to be overly scripted and restrictive that way, because again, this is regular session. But the thing that brings us together, the emergent issue is the Biden administration and its announcements. And so that's what brings us together. Most everything else can wait until January 10th. It's not that far away now. And so so we'll push things that can be pushed off into the regular session or the session that starts in January. But these other issues we feel are of such a nature that we need to act now.
By law and statute, it may not have to be a narrow conversation on legislation. Would you expect it to be?
Well, I think that most, the committees, the chairs are in charge of their own agendas. And I think most all of them know what needs to be taken up now and what can be pushed off until January. That's not to say that there are not a lot of unfinished businesses, take property taxes, for example, and the list can go on and on. But those are issues that I think are better taken up, in January, where we can devote weeks of public hearings and the process to getting to a good answer on some of these larger questions.
There's a lot of lawmakers in this building that are going to be campaigning for something heading into the end of the year, and it's already started.
Right.
I've heard a comment from the community, well, is this just going to be lawmakers taking an opportunity to each grandstand and campaign on the House floor? Are there concerns about that?
Well, I can actually no. Last May, anybody that was watching our process knew that this day was coming. And so it's here, and we have issues that we need to take up. I expect the best behavior from all members and to take care of our business in an expeditious way. Our goal is to be done by that Wednesday, but that's in no way a limit. But I think all of the legislators that we've talked to have plans for that weekend, and they want to come in, take care of the business, close the books, and get ready for January 10th.
All right, everybody's got plans for the weekend, Joe. 3 days they want to get this done. Okay, so this is the caveat here.
Okay.
Because the Senate, they sine died to end their side of the session, meaning, doesn't it mean, I should say, that the governor has to call them back because they followed the rules and said, we're out, but the governor then has to call them back. So what happens now with the Senate?
We're in uncharted territory, and I hate to use the word, Brian, but this is unprecedented. And we've been talking about this since it happened back in May, that the Senate formally adjourned for the year, saying we're done for the year, we'll see you next year. And the House said, no, we're going to keep going. Maybe we'll come back at the end of the year. I checked in with Senate leadership this afternoon, and they basically tell me they're weighing their options. They're talking with the members to figure out exactly what the members would like to do next. In terms of legal avenues or legal options, we'll have to get probably an opinion for the Attorney General's office on how this whole thing comes together. However, Brian, all of it's incumbent on the House of Representatives coming to an agreement on a piece of legislation, most likely focused on the federal vaccine mandates. It's wait and see for now, but I am under the impression we'll learn more from the representatives in the Senate tomorrow, and we'll hope to have that update here on the 208.
So it is conceivable the House could come back, spend 3 days, and the Senate be like, cool,
It's
see you
possible.
in January.
It's possible.
Wow.
Boy, the action never stops in Idaho politics, Brian.
It doesn't.
You take that to the bank.
Thanks for keeping up with it, Joe.
No problem.
Picture of Lucky Peak. I love when the clouds just sit in the mountains, those low clouds, just beautiful. Roadways are wet again with scattered showers working through the Treasure Valley, the Boise area at 51 degrees, Twin Falls at 42, 39 at McCall and Haley area at 45 degrees right now. This is our band of showers that's working through currently as expected right at the drive home time. And then as we wrap up rush hour, or rush hours as it typically is, we'll see the clouds stay in place, but I think we'll get more dry hours through the overnight hours. However, we're not done with the wet weather completely. I do think there will be a quick little spot sprinkle, a quick isolated shower, very light in nature, very early tomorrow morning in the Treasure Valley, and then most of that moisture moves back up into our mountain areas for some widely scattered showers and high elevation snow above 6,000 feet tomorrow in our central mountains. We get the sunshine back by tomorrow afternoon. It is a bit breezy with winds out of the west gusting at 25 miles per hour at times tomorrow, but our temperatures will also be warmer. And again, we get the sunshine back. So highs tomorrow, 60 for Boise and Mountain Home, 64 in Ontario, 45 for McCall, 42 for Stanley. The Halloween trick-or-treating forecast, I'm calling it seasonably scary, about right where we should be after sunset at 52 degrees, partly cloudy skies, only a slight chance, I'm thinking a 10% chance of a spot shower, but it looks a little more likely as we make our way into the beginning of next week, the beginning of November as well. Monday, of course, marking the first of a new month. Here's a look at the 7-day forecast, which you can always find with more details at ktvb.com.
Our final minute of the show or so, time to look at some of the comments you sent in, like this one. Brian, I'd like to see more airtime devoted to the security guard who apparently confronted the shooter and putting life on the line and probably saving lives by doing that. Also, aren't security guards armed at the mall? We looked into that today, have yet to get an answer, but from all intents and purposes, it doesn't appear so. However, as for the security guard, Joe Acker, we haven't learned a whole lot about her. We reached out to their family, and they have asked for some privacy at this time. Otherwise, we would like to get more, but that's possible over the next couple of days. Just like finding out more about the shooter as well, and mental health, and how that all plays into this. We'll learn a lot more about these things as the days and weeks continue.